smile, make a new start. Going to California with an aching in my heart.
All the California, California, coming home.
So I'm going to be reading poems from a manuscript that I put together and I have out at some contests. It's currently called Call My Love Sanctuary. And so these poems are love poems that I've written over the last 4 years, love poems in like all their different forms. And because it's been a very, we all know what the last 4 years have been. And so I just have been focused on imagining a joyful future, creating comfort on the page, and creating a little magic. So that's these poems. This first poem has an Audre Lorde epigraph. As they become known to and accepted by us, our feelings and the honest explorations of them become sanctuaries and spawning grounds for the most radical and daring ideas. Audre Lorde, poetry is not a luxury. This is the poem Sanctuary. I tell a man straight for the first time, I need to be valued. And a hot pink tropical flower blooms. I step back to see the many retaining walls I've built. I recognize these as fears, and vines grow and stretch until every border is reclaimed. As the garden becomes more lush, more green, so too my voice becomes more rich. Soon call-outs echo through the valley, and each one becomes a tree to sit under and rest. I put my hand to a knot in a thick trunk of an oak and ask her to hold me. Trees are homes that need caring. Their roofs need fixing. To speak truth is an upkeep. I welcome others to sit under trees, to bring their blankets and their poems. Together, we call it a mitote and wear magnolias in our hair. Their magenta petals like ears are best suited for holding our tears. Our screams are the fertile soil holding the bones of every woman's scream that came before us. Our breath and saliva feed the hills we build together, the hills our nieces and daughters climb to paint birds, be an ocean. This next poem, I didn't mean to read, but Jerry, I was inspired by Jerry's opening poem and the remembrance of Veterans Day, and also, that we just celebrated Dia de los Muertos, All Hallows Eves. So I thought I would read this poem. I got to go to Gettysburg National Military Park in 2017 with the residency through National Parks Arts Foundation and Poetry Foundation. And I spent 3 weeks living in this battlefield, and it was really scary. For many reasons, being a brown person in this white space, also ghosts. I was like really scared of running into a ghost, having an interaction with a ghost. And then one day I went out to the Peach Orchard, which is a famous battle site. And I started asking the ghosts questions, and that was really transformative. After that, I felt like we were in that space together and we were respecting each other. This is that poem. This is the poem that came from that experience. Ghost interview with a soldier in the peach orchard. Dried peach pits litter the ground, reminding me of bones. Are your bones below the soil? Is this why you care for fields dressed in morning fog, snagging on fences? How do you want to be remembered? If you could write anything on one of these monuments lining the orchard, what would you write? Have you ever pledged allegiance to a flag, any flag? Have you ever loved a flag like your mother's arms? Speaking of your mother's arms, how do they smell when tucked tight below your nose? Like fresh baked loaves, or maybe stone? I want a better simile, but I need you to tell me. If you could go back, what would you say to your father? What would you teach your daughter? I still hope to have a child, so consider this advice. In your final moments, whom did you think of? Did you write this someone love letters home with sign-offs like, I wait to hold you and forever yours? I sit below a tree alone at twilight because I'm always alone and afraid. Are you here with me? Is that you rustling the branches? I tell you, I'm done being afraid. Do you hate war? Did you ever love war? Am I totally off? And is war like God, unknown, all around, a mystery too big to understand? I want to believe in love like some believe in God. Will you help me? Do you think I'm crazy? Do you think I'm beautiful? Would you date me? Don't answer that. What can I say? I talk too much when I'm anxious. Please tell me a question exists that will help us both let go. Thank you. And this is rancherita. My grandmother used to call me her little rancherita because I really love nopales, cactus. And so this is called rancherita. Tengo panza, pero no pancita, panzota. And cypress thighs, brown and strong, that cling to your cliffs, reminding you you're not yet ocean. Lucky you to have the earth's devotion, to be gripped tight by beginnings. This rancherita belongs beyond borders, grows over and under fences, wild. Unattainable, untamable is not unattainable. She is mountain woman, nopalita with spines, a jumping choya, a chola that jumps at the first sign of hate. Wait, I can't claim chola. I've never been given a hood name, but her hoops, not with my spines, rocks, and roots within. And then this next poem, in 2020, April 2020, it was National Poetry Month. We were also like still very early in all the fear and chaos of the pandemic. And I thought that I would do something to like bring a little joy. And I had asked people to send me photos through Instagram of like a happy memory or a selfie during, quarantine, just something that like I could write a love poem to them. And this one's inspired by a photo I got from my friend Ryan Granados. And in the photo, it's the 80s. She's sitting in one of those round wicker chairs. I think we all had one of those like futon wicker chairs. And she's a kid and she's holding up an Ebony magazine that's got Rudy Huxtable on the cover and she's very happy. So this is for Ryan. Love poem of amusement. You kick back. Ebony opened on your lap, sneakers on a chair, not one care. Rudy Huxtable and you beam like besties. Show me how to unlock 1980s bliss and blow away bubble blues. You once told me your eyes are always shut in photos. You said it like steamed broccoli, but your eyes are cotton candy, spinning possibilities. Sweet, ask eyes to imagine kinder futures and us again together. And this poem is for my grandmother. Rituals of renewal. A monarch crosses my path. I smile at the flap of her orange wings, call her grandma. Evoke her gray cable knit cardigan and the yellow lemons that grew right behind her house. The way she teased me for needing to speed past her, barely hello, out the back door to select a single bright Meyer, to bring it in, place it at the counter, bear a knife, slice it through its belly, squeeze its juices over a bowl of frijoles de olla. And after I devoured not one, but 2 hefty helpings, why aren't you hungry? Why aren't you eating? She'd wink. Whole magic beans swimming in caldo, no matter how small the pot, were always enough and always perfect. I'm rarely perfect, if at all. Too often I think of some stupid thing I said or did, and I smack hands over my eyes exclaiming, why are you so stupid? Or worse, God, I hate me. I do this more in quarantine. Is it because I have no one to talk to? I replay past transgressions to remember what it's like to be around others? Or is it because I have no one to talk to, I talk to myself? If so, I could be kinder to my companion. I could tell her I appreciate how hard she tries. No, you aren't a try hard, I'll say. You care deeply for what you offer this world. I'll tell her I love her for how she believes words have the power to conjure more just realities. Working for more is no shameful act. I'll tell her fuck shame. but not like, oh, damn, shame, I want to fuck you so hard. Fuck that patriarchal language. No, more like, fuck off, shame, you good for nothing waste of time. Time is a lemon, and that lemon is me. Thank you. And then this one's, I guess, a more traditional romantic love poem, or like what I hope for. My big fantasy is like, I just want a lazy Sunday. Okay, so seeking Sunday morning guitar riffs. Play me a song and I'll dance. Write me a song and I'm yours. The swallowtail's proboscis curl atop its head like a crown. I work to be just as natural. I unfurl my tongue, drink you in, call your toxins self-preservation. White nectar trickles down my chin, onto my belly, keeps me shimmering. Bitterness breaks into bright orange spots against iridescent blue wings, make a scene. You magic me into song, and I'm platinum in the ears of partygoers playing on and on. And this last poem, and thank you, Jerry and Bryn and all the VC poets for having me. And I am really excited to share the mic with Ashaki and Lisa, two poets I admire and worked with a lot and friends. And I'm excited to be here, so thank you. This last poem it started as the photographer Rafa Cardenas was invited by the Music Center to do a video poem, and he asked me to work on that with him. And I was working on that with him. So this is with the Music Center, and it was in July 2020. And I had written this piece about, I live in San Gabriel. And so I had written this piece about the mission of San Gabriel, like being torn apart. And then in that same time, the church got set on fire. And I was like, oh my God, I can't put this in the world. And so I had to like revise the whole thing. And since then, the poem's out. And it's, if you can see, there's actually, there's 5 poets on it. But I since revised it, and so it's now 4 parts. And this is my last poem, and thank you. Love poem for LA, July 2020. 1. May this poem honor the Tonga people. May morning steps with mom reclaim the corner of Live Oak in a street named for a conqueror I refuse space to, with bougainvillea's resolve to topple a wooden wall. May these lines relieve Toy Perina from her post. 2. When alarms announce curfews and police attempt to stomp the people's demands, Dad advises Mission Glass at Cesar Chavez for replacing a cracked windshield. But nothing delivers George Floyd safely home to his daughter, Gianna. San Gabriel's Mission's thatched roof catches fire at 4 a.m. testing structure, but nothing suffices. When a priest stamps ash to foreheads, he says, remember, you are dust. 3. Fire is renewal. Land cannot forget. Land is mother. Mother's womb is structure. Ash is not nothing. How many futures can we sketch in ash? 4. When the bells finally came down, their tongues were fat from centuries of wagging, lashed to ropes and forced to cry. This was not the life they dreamed when first molded, but now they relive as 262 copper hearts that sing with the wind. An art installation forged by native craftspeople, one heart for every year the mission stood, a sanctified memorial. The Indigenous Women's Monument, dedicated by the people of the city of San Gabriel as a place for healing. The sign reads in 5 languages. Not far off, an empty pedestal remains of a criminal statue. Because the people voted against his bronze or name, cursing their work, girls from the high school volunteers baptized green skirts, hauled the statue to South El Monte and dumped it into the river marshes. Army of engineers said, let it drown. And the blue herons keep guard. Come, sit here and listen to the women and their stories. Be touched by medicine. Thank you.
So this is the poem that it was published under. Title is Contact Tracing, but really it's several different excerpts from I Have Prepared My Whole Life to Live. And I'm going to be reading the numbers as they are in the long sequence. 2, 8 days ago, when we were still pretending our lives could persist, unaltered, we chose the air and space of Descanso Gardens over a museum. We were already washing hands more profusely, denying hugs. We leaned up to smell the cherry blossom, caress the rough skin of trees. Today, I feed my skin. I brush the Norfolk Island pine on my balcony. I had been craving slowness to clear the way for learning, to say no, to value time, the only yield we can never recoup. But now, 8. The balcony rail steams like mountains warming in daybreak. The plants drip accumulated dew that dampens the chair and my thighs. The birds reclaim the mornings like humans, their journals. It has taken 13 days since Grace hugged me after the yoga class where I brought my own props, for me to let gratitude seep in like rain. Carries in a wintry cold, waking me from a fevered dream. How should my body temperature feel on cold nights under a down blanket? 11. Now the crying stage, even for the introverts. This is not Christmas or a retreat. Someone is making bacon and I am alone. 22. The clouds are heavier. The birds sleep in. The sirens start early. I am afraid of entering the outside. I test how thin my fear will stretch. Walk 1 block to the west, then 1 block east, north, then south. Like when mom permitted my sister and me to bike only as far as the long streets or the Horners. Outside Walgreens, I stopped to watch the military helicopter camouflaged against the sky's metal gray that could take bullets. Like clockwork, it flies over each day. What do they carry? Patients, ventilators, masks, bodies. I recall how I recklessly risked my life speeding up the 170 North to open the library, always hurried, because I could not decide which shirt, which shoes. The next 2 poems come from my chapbook, Love Lessons from Buffy the Vampire Slayer from Dancing Girl Press. And I haven't read from those in a while, and I always enjoy that, but these 2 poems in particular, I feel like carry on the pandemic themes of grief, even though they was written long before the pandemic, of grief and that sort of elasticity of time. I'm also reading them as a little preview. I have a second Buffy inspired chapbook coming out sometime soon. It was supposed to come out this fall, but it's a little delayed. And I imagine in 2022, you'll get to hear me read from those poems often. So I'm not going to read those today, but these 2 are from the first one. And the numbers are, each poem is numbered, and there's sort of meaning there, but nothing important, just so you know. So Love Lesson number 497 from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. There is no soundtrack for mourning the mother's death. From glory, just a body. It's not her. It's not her. She's gone, like music leaves the body. So glory, a god in exile, inhabits bodies known as screenwriters. Move or not, speak or not. On the screen of my unscored life, my episode, unfinished silences I don't know how to fill, where memories flood in. You are a demon child, joked the mother. Joked is perfect past tense. Perfect because passed on, or simply perfect because passed away. I passed my exit, forced to drive along alone, and now dead is the radio. And I cannot think of a morning song to fill the empty car because I am not ready for you not to be here. Love lesson number 29 from Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Sean Carroll. An accident of meaning, words slipped your lips and fell into mine. You say, I put words in your mouth, but it was my tongue. I don't want to be the kind of girl who freaks every time the ambiguity of a poem fails. But if we were physicists, we could talk in equations, forget all the stuff that gets in the way, like the resistance of air or the resistance, does it have to mean something? Of your tongue tip on the roof of my, what could I do but swallow what you gave me? Lies don't need words. Slayers aren't immune to slayage of the heart. And time is a forward moving arrow that I always seem to back into. Miss the heart much? I go on, undead, unhealed. I try to remember the future next time. The next several poems are from another chapbook that I wrote in the pandemic that was inspired by this yoga retreat, that I went to online, everything was virtual last year. And it focused on the chakras and the planets. And so inspired by that, and then doing some research on the NASA website, the planets, and I'm very grateful for a Dorland, a residency that I had at Dorland Mountain Arts, where I kind of drafted the first draft of this chapbook. These poems, allow each planet to speak to us, and they were really fun for me to write, and I hope they're fun for you to listen to. Sorry. For what it's worth, I feel pleasure in my contradictions, infinite potential ways of dwelling in myself. I'll give you a year to admire each flawless hemisphere. From afar, do I appear to blush? Turn me over and open the mind to trust. Without inhibitions, you may wonder, how does the goddess of beauty have no entourage encircling her, no ring of admirers? My vitriolic breath moves like hurricanes. How can one love sate as fires brew through the veins? Lovers lament, Venus, your pressure is crushing. Do you want a journey of evolution or just to be charmed? Better to explode like pearl finds paint, touch my flesh, accept the grace of my independence. It's all pluck and grit, of course, this art of being inhospitable to anything but vamps of self-worth garnished with sugared oranges. Let's create something so luminous, I melt myself into new rivers. Right action. I act to get the job done, done like the exhale of all that has been metabolized. My siblings will talk that Mars, a rash fire, sharp acidic reeks her breath. so intense and dense. I let them choke on laughter, mistake the destruction of my flesh for impulsive rage. I am the clarity of cold ash, of fires burned, of rage's decay. I am a warrior witch, no shame in my ringless reality. I polish my iron purpose and double moon power. Unfazed, I sculpt rocks into mountains. Bring me those who can face the directness of my desire, embrace in a slow grind, forge what really matters. Out of my lungs bubble hot springs of healing, the source of human life, flowing over every inch of their earthly body, so precious, so abundant. It is not conflict I crave. There is no power in wrong wanting, but the righteous adventure of the freedom to not resist. New horizons. Don't believe what they say. It is sweet to live beyond their astronomical labels, their clearance, beyond their neighborhood regulations. They don't see it is I who disinvited them. Everyone knows the underworld, my love, is where we find ourselves, free to dance for our own decadence, celebrating the nights filled with emancipation. I don't enslave my moons. It's impossible to do this 6-day rotation alone. When you move so slow, you see gravitas is not the only way to liberate. So we circle around each other on the decentered fringe of their solar-centric system of fear. I made you a heart-shaped glacier, bigger than Texas, just light years away. Be mine, my love. Cross over their imaginary river into the outside. This is the last one from that series. This one was just published in So to Speak, which I'm super excited about. I've been wanting to get in that journal for ages. I caused Pluto's demotion. He may be king of the underworld, but I am queen of the darkness within that demands attention. What will they do with what they learn? I have 557 Earth years of patience around our sun. Yet they balk how I can wait 9 hours for her rays to heat my cheek. This is why they've yet to find a way out of the binaries that bind them. The sun, the moon, the center, the devotee, the masculine, the feminine, refusing to see the power of pulling tides and seasons. So they make up categories and rules for what is beyond their rover's reach. Trans-Neptunian, ice is incompatible with life. Everything has to be this or that, planet or not planet. Then I showed up in my mottled pink and gray, a marvel floating through their tiny window. I became their new discovery. First, they called me Xena. Some guy liked the show. When they realized I was larger than their god planet, they called me Ares. As if they could arrange a marriage between celestial beings, as if they could assign my subservience. I don't care what they call me. I delight in their discord and strife as they define and redefine what we are, as if being is not enough. Ever think we already had names, my moon and I, in our fields of ice? Like colonizer in the wild, wild west, they were quick to claim us, label us lawless, as if there's a wrong way to orbit the sun. And then my final poem. So this is another long sequence that I started when I went back to do another residency at Dorland this past spring. And I don't know. I seem to be writing these like long sequences. And so this is, I'm just going to read one excerpt from that to finish off. It's a pretty short one. Excerpts from Touching in Smoke and COVID. I asked the California oaks on the autumn equinox, how do I love? I crawl into the shelter of limbs, caress the beauty of the knots. One branch reaches to the other, entwined they hold each other up. I sit at the pond and watch the turtles who also outstretch their limbs, ancient clawed feet thrust out of the safety of their shells to meet stillness as they bask in the sun's heat radiating through air above and stone below. Does this memory keep them warm through the night? Do they imagine when the dark sets how their soft bodies could touch unshelled? Or is it always just this moment, no before or after? If you came with me, could we practice growing limb to limb into just now, no memory, no need to imagine more? Lost in the imagining, do I miss what is? Taste of morning in your mouth, wrinkles around eyes in sheets, all the evidence of time well lived. Thanks.
Unfortunately, police-involved shootings have increased this year, and funding has also increased. So we are not making the headway that we wanted. So I am going to read this poem and then show you what I did to the poem to help other people access it. It's called Standard American Similes with Interchangeable Blacks. The night is black as skin. It falls slowly, publicly, like an Eric. Night hushes like Jordan. Sky creeps like a black body's blood. Sleepless birds enforce curfew. The people are as broken and exposed as Emmett, aren't we? Time drags like James. Look how Otis levitates full-faced and pale among the black walnut trees. Stars surround as quickly as officers. Again, night is dark, like mother's throat. Her cry is black with grief. We have moved into metaphor. I'd like to share my screen with you all now. This is my visual interpretation of the poem. I think a couple of you all have seen it thus far. And in this code, I have created lists of names of those lost to police violence, and I've made them interchangeable as the poem says. They have been grouped by different types of deaths, but they were generally all accounted for on social media or on television. So once I line the code up, I press play. And you will notice that every iteration of the poem has a different set of people included. This is my meditation on their loss. So that poem appears twice in Surveillance, and it appears with different names. So the coding was an appropriate way for me to illustrate a little bit better. And what I was trying to convey is like the everydayness of police brutality, and also how we just lose time, or we track time by deaths. And also I was trying to enter the conversation on white gaze, which is embedded in the laws of the United States, which kind of attributes blame to the Black person, or studies the Black person as an other or as a foreigner to the country, or kind of gives a pretense of omniscience and defines Blackness as what is not whiteness. So Surveillance is a number of poems that have to do with that. And I want to kind of talk about today with a few poems, the idea of Black gaze, which is still somewhat illegal. Think about how April Ryan was shaking her head at Sean Spencer. No, is it Sean Spencer? Sean, oh my gosh, what was that guy's name? He was just really terrible with PR. Anyway, April Ryan shook her head during the debriefing at the White House, and Sean Spicer, lost his crap because a Black woman was shaking her head and judging him. And that actually made the news instead of what the debriefing was. Similarly, when Trump would admonish Yamiche Alcindor when she would ask questions, everyone else had reasonable questions and hers were just evil and vicious. So in that way, returning the gaze is still not welcome, but it's not, punishable by death as it was. So I'm going to read a few poems. They're my Lantern Laws collection about how the gaze has been incorporated into laws and monitoring Black behavior. The first one is they're titled by their law names. Manhattan 1713. No slaves over the age of 14 could be out at night without a lantern by which they could be plainly seen. How does one exist always in violent illumination? The light flooding, bright maw. Night is blacker and shifting uncontrolled. What must the Black body look like, glowing at dusk, always foreign, haloed, warning others of its coming? Oversight. Light to your shimmering black, lantern to chin, chattel. Your glint and focused quiet, your poor person's pride, well-lit niggerness. Floating, a firefly's wonder, your haunt humble, an unsaved shadow, big as the new moon. So generally during this period, if a Black person was out at dusk, they needed to have a lantern to illuminate themselves and permission from their owner to be walking anywhere they were going, or they needed to be accompanied by a white person. And here's how it's been carried over. Brooklyn, 2014, omnipresence. Floodlights loom over the projects, humming on watch like sentinels. In this open-ended morning, the Black body always heaven-bound. No one mistakes its slipping between drawn curtains as safety, the constant whirring of generators, locusts, death rattle, surveillance. Hear them always, buzzing into bone. Officers lean into their confidence. Each evening, the lights surrogates. observing and pushing through privacy, shining on all inches of suspicion. Amplification. You and your broad nose are of interest. In the furious shine, you cast shadows. At all times of day, you fit several descriptions. What is light but an accomplice? Going back. Manhattan, 1722. Black funerals had to be held during daylight. Look, the body adapts, is even buried in the sun's brightest moments. What can be done to a body that sleeps and prays in the perpetual day, beams seeping into its casket? Look, what can be done with a body watched from all angles for signs of danger and magic? Without death's sunset, the body is eternal as the wearing sun. Yes, and brighter still. Manhattan, 1742. Every household was required to keep watch for suspicious nighttime behavior of slaves. Even evening, the body is studied, its shadows watched naturally as if changing seasons. Long nights are more sport than rest. Look at the dark and its supple shapes. Isn't the moon ripe, steely as an iron bit, vigilant as the community, armed and encouraged? And the last in this series, close study. This is the origin of science. Dark matter eats its edges. A body black and luminous swallows its surroundings. Hungry, carrying in its mouth all sundowns, all dawns, meaning it is difficult to imitate invisibility while being studied. More difficult to disappear when watched. Okay. Thank you for sitting with that series. So since slavery, there's been this desire to kind of look back and challenge the gaze, to make eye contact, to like roll one's eyes, to judge, to tell people about themselves, neck roll included. We're really kind of living the life right now that we're able to do this and not be hung because of it. There is a piece that I just had published that gives the gaze back. So it gives the gaze to a Black woman. It's like, here is the power to judge and assign and know all things and name all things. It is called POV. It begins with a quote from Zadie Smith. That a Black woman is insisting on casting her eye upon whatever she wants in itself represents defiance. A reckless eyeballing that was once unavailable to Black people. And just as context, the Jim Crow law was called reckless eyeballing. So if a Black person were to make eye contact with a white person, across genders, male to woman, woman to man, then the Black person would get in trouble. They could be looking because someone shouted, "Don't you dare." reckless eyeballing is what you would be charged with. 1, what a luxury to look at you, look at what you made, a mess of meaning. I drag my sight along the colonization of edits, of conditions, of unstable rubrics. Whiteness, an inexhaustible thing to be seen. 2, I see a new you each glance, first porcelain, now ecru, now moderate white. The wonder of shapeshifting. How odd your self-cleaning. A regeneration, yet same. A same, always molting through your soft doctrines. Your hands intentional and free to build absolution. Its language always in service of its body, its hands always in service of desire. A monument and mirror. You, monument. Me, mirror. 3, I am most intrigued when you shed skins. Scalp to ankle, a cascade of old rules. All your faces, new fronts and decrees. A godness. Let me see if I can fit into your afters and their safeties. My darker hands, my black back in your old sharp suits. You are most vibrant in the dark, your undisturbed satisfaction glowing from each pore. The delight of your sovereign body, my ethnography in the night swallow, terminus. My eyes big and dark as what they've seen, and hungry. And I want to share with you all this tiny project that I've been chipping away at. So I've been talking about white gaze and shaping kind of the nation's laws. And I've been looking at bell hooks, I've been looking at Toni Morrison, and of course they very adeptly demonstrate that gaze can always be reclaimed and redirected in language. And language has been of interest to me because we always see the damage that it can do. Like more recently during the Trump administration, we've talked about how the media's words kind of unravel or muddle some issues or both sides issues and lose kind of the facts of the matter. So I want to talk a little bit about its weaponization, language's weaponization, and how it announces deviation, how it announces judgment. Like it is a tool, language is a tool of oppression, and it plays favorites. And, you know, more recently, I think of Kyle Rittenhouse and how the judge has banned the use of victim on the people that Kyle actually killed. I feel like it's on video. I don't know what else we can say about that. They can be called rioters, but they can't be called victims. So these word games are still definitely in play. And also when you think about who was a child and who was an adult, depending on what race they are. So I'm doing this, I'm building something else, let me just say that. And I want to show you all what Toni Morrison has to say and how it relates to this project. And that will be the last thing I share this evening. Let me find Miss Toni. I want to thank you all again for spending time with me and allowing me to share these new projects with you. It was a risk, y'all. It was a risk. Do not think there should be feedback, but please let me know. This is one of the most popular, or one of the more popular engagements with Toni Morrison. Are you all able to hear this?
No, it doesn't have sound.
That's odd. I just shared my sound. Let me try it again. Off on mute.
You don't think you will ever change and write books that incorporate white lives into them substantially?
I have done.
In a substantial
Paradise.
way?
You can't understand how powerfully racist that question is, can you? Because you could never ask a white author, when are you going to write about Black people? Whether he did or not, or she did or not. Even the inquiry comes from a position of being in the center
And being used to being in the same.
and being used to being in the center. And saying, you know, is it ever possible that you will enter the mainstream? It's inconceivable that where I already am is the mainstream.
Oh no, that wasn't the implication of my question. I think you are very, very much in the mainstream. It's a question of the subject of your narrative, whether you want to alter the parameters of it, whether you see any benefit in doing that, or will you clearly see disadvantages in doing it from your own point of view?
Artistic disadvantages. There are no pluses for me. Being an African-American writer is sort of like being a Russian writer who writes about Russia, in Russian, for Russians. And the fact that it gets translated and read by other people is a benefit. It's a plus. But he's not obliged to ever consider writing about French people or Americans or anybody.
Okay. So this piece has been discussed within my group, within my circle widely. Not only because the interviewer dismisses her role in centering whiteness, but cannot hear how whiteness is already in the language, and that Toni taking away from that and putting it on a different group is not a wild thought. It is not anti-white. It is actually talking about a universe outside of what the interviewer believes should be centered. So the work that I am currently doing is trying to code the spaces where whiteness passively exists. The first place I went to was Sherman-Williams. And that is you guys know that's a paint store. I'm so interested in it because I am approaching home ownership and I'm like, I want to paint different things. And I'm looking at all these names and there's not a lot of names for like brown tones, neutrals, but there are about 100 names for white. And so I took just a sample, what you're looking at on the code screen, and I hope that you all can see this. Yeah, you all can see the right screen. The white paint, the white colors, even if they do end up looking brown, have such warm attributes to them. There's not like a bad white color here. So what I've done is I've taken the interviewer's quote, which was, you don't think you'll ever change and write books that incorporate white, white lives into them substantially. And I took these names: restful white, modest white, reliable white, pure white, incredible white, polite white. Like, wow, I'm so excited to get something white. And then I ran that. And the code is now titled Watch the Language, because you'll find something in it that means that something else is not in it. So anytime she makes the statement, a Sherman-Williams paint color has been inserted, I feel like there are two names for Black, and then even the tones that are my color are some type of white, because you add white to that base. This is the last piece that I want to share with you all. Okay, thank you for your time. There.
Thank you, Ashaki.
Wow.
Thank you, Jerry, for giving me space to experiment with things. It's crazy over here in this apartment.
Wow, that was great, and that whole through line you delivered through your poetry is just marvelous. And you know, you should be on cable news with Eddie Gow and those guys.
Thank you, friend. I wouldn't survive. I wouldn't survive, but thank you.
Well, I love all three of you. You've been in my friends of mine in poetry for a long time, and not to make this about me, but you know, I decided when I was gonna have this reading, I was gonna have a couple of my friends featured in the way I know them, and you guys just did such a marvelous job. I'm so happy. Let's unplug and or unmute and give applause.
Woo! Yeah. Hey.
Yeah, well, we'll have to do this again another year when we can do it out in person. And next month, December 5th, I think is the date. It's a Sunday. It's three of my buddies, three guys I've known for a long time, which is Rick Blooper, Daniel McGinn, and a guy from Ventura named Fernando Albert Salinas, who is a younger guy that I just met a couple of years ago, but you know, that's kind of what I want to do for next month. In the meantime, I hope people have put stuff in the text, and go ahead and print it. What do you call it? Download it. I think I've made it possible for you to do that, and get all that information. And I think we're good for this Sunday afternoon. I think did we get more sleep, or do we need to get more sleep? I know I need more sleep.
We gained an hour. Lucky us. We
Yeah.
gained an hour.
All right. Well, hey, great to see you all. Go to VCP SoCal.org if you want to see this replayed in about a week. I'll have it up there to take you back to you. That's if the technology works. If I didn't screw up the recording. Anyway, have a great rest of the weekend, everybody, and a really wonderful week. And hope to see you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you for everyone who came. Lovely.
Thank you.
No one wants to go.
Nobody wants to go.
Thank you so much for hosting us.
Oh, thank you for coming.
That was fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jerry.
Closing.
Have a good week. Have a good week ahead.
Good night, everybody.
Also, shout out to
Bye.
Becky. We see you, girl. We see you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I smell dinner, so.
Oh, no, you don't.
Please go eat.